So what you want to do is open up a new page within Notion. And for this particular page, I'm going to title it Task. I like to view everything in small text and full width, just to take up the entire screen. It helps with my visuals. And then I'm going to create an inline database and name it my task again for this particular page. And now I am creating my elements. So changing the name to task name. Now I am adding a new one, status, which is already pre-populated with the options that I want. Adding a task description so that you can give yourself more information about the task that you're completing. Going in and adding attachments, so using the file and media upload in case there are any additional documents that you want to attach to this particular task or any particular task that you put within this database. The next one is I want to go in and choose the property for select and create different priorities for each task that I have. So low, medium, and high priority, just modifying the color scheme for this particular property. And now I want to also create a different priority, which I call a daily priority. And that is so that I can prioritize which tasks I'm going to do and in which order. So, do I want it to be one of the first things I do in the morning? Is it the one thing that I definitely need to do for the day? Is it in the parking lot? Again, there are tons of things that we would like to do, but limited in time to do so. So wanting to get it out of my brain and put it somewhere. And for that, it would be the parking lot. And then, the other times of the day. So afternoon, evening, weekends is the recurring task and so forth. Now, the next property that I am creating is the type of activity. And so for this, I'm choosing the select property. I'm adding a few examples here. So admin, appointment, but then you can come up with your other activity types. For instance, reflection, research, meetings, networking, and what have you. So now I am going in, choosing the select property again, and I'm adding project tags. So a project tag could be something like if you have a small business or consulting practice, it could be for that. It can be personal, it could be home related, family and friends. These are a number of the categories that I have for my task database. Now I'm going in and I'm just adding the due date. That option is already available. What I did do was I changed how it's formatted so that it doesn't give the long date, it gives the abbreviated date. Now I am adding in an estimated time. This is just to estimate how much time it would take in order to complete the task. And then if you want to gauge yourself against that, you can. So I add that. Now I'm going in and adding another select property. This time it is add to this week. Analog version, meaning it allows you to go in and set the day of the week that you are completing this task. You will see why I'm adding this later on as we continue to build out this database. This would be very helpful when it comes to filtering the view of the database and wanting to see what's being done on which particular day of the week. Now I'm going in and I am creating some customized properties using the option for creating formulas. And so this one is the date of the week, which is going to be based on the due date. And so for this, building out this particular Notion formula using the format date function, selecting the due date because that's what it's going to be based on, and then how I want the response to be formatted. Now I'm going in again in order to create another customized property using the formula option. This time it is for today. Again, this is going to come into play later when it comes to filtering the views. And so for this, I am using the format date function, the due date again, and then again how I want the output to look like, what I want that to look like. I'm using the format date option again and selecting now. What this formula is going to do is that if the due date that I've selected is today, or that if you're using this template is today, then it's going to populate and say today. And again, you'll see how this plays out later when we set up the different views and you want to just isolate the task that are due for that particular day. Okay, now I am using the button feature in order to make it easier for me to, and you if you're using this template or building out this property, in order to add additional days to your task. Let's say that you had a particular task like running an errand that you wanted to do, weren't able to do it that day, and you want to change the due date of that, and so move it further into the future. This allows you to easily do that by setting up a button and adding 7 days to the due date. So this is what I'm building out now for you. So just testing this out so you can see how it works. I'm adding the 7 days, and at the particular time that I am building this, 7 days added to the due date would have made it February 5th. Now I'm just going in and selecting the checkbox and changing that to done. This will come into play later on once you've completed a task and again want to remove it from your view. So I'll show that later on. Now I am going in and adding the property for date, and so choosing and creating the start task date. And now I'm doing the same for the end task date. Now I'm going in and using the button feature again. Love buttons. And this will make it easier just to start a task. And so I'm going in, I'm setting this button to edit the brand new task that you create. So that's what you do when you select this page. I'm setting the start date property or start time property to the time it was triggered and the status to in progress. So now I'm going in and I'm going to create a number of customized properties using the formula option. The first one being task tracking. So what I'm doing here is setting it up so that I can see how much time has progressed from the time I start my task and select that to whatever moment in time it is. And I'm actually putting this on hold because there is another property that I need to create before I go back and finish creating the customized formula. So now I am creating an additional customized option for the actual time, which is now set at now using the now function. Now I'm going back to the other property that I'm creating so that I can complete building out the entire function or formula. So now you can see how this looks in action. I'm selecting the start, which gives you the start time. At this particular time, it was 1:52, but I'm going to go in and change that because there's a lag with the actual time while I'm trying to screen record. And so I went back and set it for 1 p.m. so you can see the difference and how it's tracking the actual minutes from when you select start to the actual time of day that you're working on it. Now, because you may take a break while you're doing a task, and so tracking time based on, start to now will not, in that case, be reflective of what you're doing. I'm going in and I'm creating in time options as well. And so I'm going to build a formula, which is what I'm doing right now, building the formula so that we can also have we can set the in time and then get from that how much time it actually took in order to complete a task. And again, in order to make this part of the process easier, I'm going to create a button in order to end the task. And that's what you see me building here, similar to what I did when I built the button for starting the task. And what you see, what I did not realize at this particular point was that I did not name the button in task. I will obviously catch this later on, as you will see, and change that. Now I'm going in and again creating additional customized properties in order to help me track the amount of time it took in order to do tasks. I'm creating two. Just a side note, you don't need to keep both, but again, just creating customized options in order to fully assess and see how much time it takes in order to carry out tasks. And then once you continue to build this out and attach these to project databases, you'll be able to see how much time it took in order to execute an entire project, not just the individual task. So as you will see, while I'm building out this particular customized function or equation, it's a bit more in depth, and that is because the way it's structured is that it will give you the total amount of minutes using the to number function option as well as the if function. And I had to pause building this out so that I can go back to task tracking, which is why I had the note showing me that I need to revise it. And I've decided to just rebuild it so that it is super clean now that I've gone in and modified the name of the other customized function. So basically, what this customized function is saying is that if the in time, so again, remember the button that was created in order to stop the task, or if you manually do it. Well, basically, if that time is equal to or less than the time it is at that particular moment that you're in, then it will reflect the in time in minutes for that task. Again, either by you using the button or you manually modifying the in time. If not, then it will show what the time is right now or at that particular moment in time in which you are doing all of this. Now I just added the option to assign it to someone, and now I'm moving on and creating again more. I love creating customized properties. Gives you a lot more control and flexibility and automation within your setup. So now with this particular customized property, I am building out a formula that will basically, up until this point, all of the other customized formulas dealing with time were in minutes. And so this particular function and formula that I'm building out will convert it to hours and minutes. So for instance, if it's 60 minutes or less, then you'll see just 60 minutes. However, if it is 72 minutes, as an example, then you will see 1 hour and 12 minutes. Again, it's just visual cues. It's the ability to quickly, again, ascertain how much time was spent on a particular task. Now I'm testing it out so that you can go ahead and see. Again, there is a lag when it comes to updating the actual time while I am screen recording, but I'm able to demonstrate this by manually updating the start time and the end time. So as you saw from this example, when it was 20 minutes, the total time elapsed for that particular task, then all of them showed 20 minutes. However, when I changed it so that it was 320 minutes, you can see how the newest calculation, the newest formula and function I created breaks that out into 5 hours and 20 minutes. So now that I've completed building out the database, there are a couple of things I want to do. I want to change the layout of my page. And so at the time of this recording, this was a relatively new feature. I mean, it's been in play for some months that Notion had released. And so absolutely love it. So I'm changing the layout of the page. So each of the tasks that are created within this database. There are a few properties or options that I want to see at the top of the page every time I create a new task. So that being status, the ability to start the task, so pressing that button, and a few other options. And just to note, you're limited to just 4 properties that you can add to the heading. Now I'm going in and I've moved the other properties that were underneath the heading over to sort of like the sidebar. And I'm creating different property groups or clusters of properties in order to have a better flow when it comes to the layout. Before I do that, before I start adding properties to that, I'm going in and I'm adding the task description and attachments underneath the heading. Now going back to the different property groups, I'm moving different types of properties between the groupings. And again, the groupings that I've set up were for time tracking, timeline, and context. So everything related to tracking how long it took to complete a task would go in a time tracking section. For instance, that's the due date, the estimated amount of time to complete the task, and what have you. And I mean, that will go under timeline. Anything related to tracking the amount of time it took in order to complete the task will go under time tracking. Remember, I mentioned that I completely forgot to change the name of the button. Well, this is where I caught it. And so I was able to modify that here. Everything else is still the way I originally set it up. I just needed to rename it. Now I've applied it to all pages or tasks within this database. And as you can see, it's formatted the way I need it to be formatted so that it flows better, in my opinion, for me and for whomever else uses this template. Now that all of that's done, we can move on to the layout of the database. And so earlier when I mentioned that some of the properties and options will come into play with how and what is being viewed, this is where we are. And so the first layout is going to be all tasks grouped by the particular weekday. And for that, I want to use the board view. I love to show the page cover. Again, just visual cues. I love those. Small card size, and I want to fit the image to the card. And then I'm going to change the grouping. So it automatically went to status, but again, I want it to be what we created, the add to this week analog. And you'll see why. And now I just need to resort all of these so that it flows the way a week normally flows. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so forth. So after I do that, I am going to change which properties are going to be shown per task or card, as it is referred to within Notion in this particular view. So now I'm just going in and updating some of these properties so that you can see what it looks like from the board view. So went in, changed the priorities, both the regular priority as well as the daily priority. For me, I try to limit how many tasks I've labeled as high. Again, because high is urgent. And so I don't want to make it seem like I have tons of fires always going off. So that's what I did, changed the status, clearing out some of the dates so that I can modify that. You'll see why. I'm going to change it to today's date or the date that I recorded this. And I've added an image so that you can see how that looks for each particular task and card. So now that's all set up. So as you add more tasks and select the date or the day of the week, then you'll see how it continues to build within that view. Now I'm going in and applying some filters and sorting. Again, what I want to show up on this particular view are all the tasks that are not in the parking lot. Again, those are tasks that you are getting out of your head and putting within a database, and then we'll later go back and see how you can assign a date, update, apply tags and what have you. and move it up to this view. And then one thing in particular is that you want the items that or the tasks that have not been completed to show up here. And what I'm realizing within this recording is that I did not go in and create a view where you can see all the tasks that have been completed. So I will do that for the actual template itself. But basically, it's the same thing. You would duplicate, for instance, this view. You could change the layout back to table so that you can see as many properties as possible at first glance. And then instead of having the property of done being unchecked, you will change that to checked. And so everything that has been completed will then show up in that view. Now I'm going in and I am creating a view for just today's task. And so that's what you saw me doing. Again, duplicating the other view that I created, but instead also adding the property of today. Remember that formula that was created in order to identify whether a task was due on that particular day. And so only those will then show up. And so I'm going to change how it's grouped so that I can see it by daily priority. Again, what's going to be done in the morning versus the afternoon versus the evening or the weekend and what have you. And now I'm just debating which properties are showing up within the views. So for today's task, because that's usually the one that I am focused on all day, there are certain properties that I want to see whereby I can start a task, end a task, and what have you. And in order to cut down on the confusion, I'm removing those properties from being viewed for the dashboard view of all tasks by weekday. For that, I just want to be able to sort. I want to see what's coming up for the entire week. And it won't just be that week, the most recent week. It'll be all the tasks for which you have assigned due dates that will show up in that database view. And within this view, unless you choose show all, only those tasks that, or only those daily priorities that have tasks assigned to them will show up. So the rest of your views will be clean. And that's it. That's the walkthrough for building out your task